My name is Corinne Hale. I'm 38 years old, and until 3 months ago, my biggest frustration in life was managers who treated payroll deadlines like casual suggestions. I work as a senior payroll specialist at Summit Outdoor Supply in Boise, Idaho. My days revolve around spreadsheets, compliance audits, and reminding grown adults that submitting timesheets late does not, in fact, make the laws of accounting bend in their favor. It's steady, predictable, safe. I liked it that way. My husband, Derek Hale, is 41. We've been married 6 years. He builds custom cabinetry, beautiful, meticulous work with hidden compartments and soft closed drawers that make people gasp during home tours. About a year ago, he decided he was tired of building dreams for other contractors and wanted to start his own business, Hale and Hearth Custom Interiors. He said it like it was destiny. I believed him, because that's what you do when someone you love looks at you like you're part of the future they're designing. The day everything cracked open was a Sunday at Boise Town Square Mall. It wasn't dramatic at first. It was errands. I needed to return a blazer that made me look like I was smuggling shoulder pads from 1987, and Derek wanted to run into Cabela's real quick to check out a new tool set he'd been researching. We split a cinnamon sugar pretzel from Auntie Anne's, laughing because we both agreed we were too old to eat like teenagers, but did it anyway. I called my sister near the food court to confirm what time we were supposed to show up for my nephew's birthday the following weekend. Derek kissed my cheek and said he'd pull the truck around so I wouldn't have to walk across the parking lot in the wind. It felt thoughtful, ordinary, the kind of small kindness you don't think twice about. I was mid-sentence with my sister when a woman in a navy polo approached me. Guest Services was stitched neatly over her pocket. Her name tag said Marisol. She looked like someone rehearsing difficult words in her head before speaking them out loud. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Is that your husband? The black Ford F-150 parked near the south entrance?" I remember nodding automatically, distracted, already half turning to look toward the doors. "You might want to come with me," she added. There's a tone people use when they know they're crossing into something personal, but feel morally obligated to do it anyway. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't curiosity. It was concern. That's what made my stomach drop before I even knew why. She led me through a hallway that smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet into a small back office. There was a desk with a half-empty coffee cup and a wall of monitors showing different angles of the parking lot. The fluorescent lighting hummed overhead. Marisol didn't say anything else. She just pointed to one of the screens and tapped a few keys. The image sharpened. There was Derek's truck, parked slightly crooked across two spaces, like he always did when he was in a hurry. Next to it sat a silver Subaru. At first, I didn't understand what I was supposed to be seeing. Then I saw him. He wasn't in his truck. He was leaning into the passenger window of the Subaru. His hand was at the back of someone's neck, his head tilted, eyes closed, and he was kissing her. Not a quick mistake, not confusion, not something that could be explained away with an awkward laugh. It was intimate, familiar, the kind of kiss that assumes history, the kind of kiss that belongs to people who have rehearsed it. I remember the oddest details. The way the wind lifted the edge of his flannel shirt, the reflection of clouds on the Subaru's windshield, the fact that his truck door was still open, like he hadn't planned to be there long. Marisol cleared her throat quietly. I've seen them here before. A few Sundays. A few Sundays. That meant routine. That meant scheduling. That meant I had been grocery shopping or folding laundry or meal prepping while my husband had a standing appointment in a mall parking lot. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I just stared. My body felt like it had stepped outside itself and left me operating on autopilot. "Thank you," I heard myself say. My voice sounded steady, almost polite. When I walked back through the mall toward the south entrance, everything looked offensively normal. Families carrying shopping bags, teenagers laughing, someone arguing about which movie to see. I stepped into the cold air and crossed the parking lot on legs that felt like borrowed equipment. 10 minutes later, I opened the passenger door of Derek's truck and slid into the seat. He was already there, engine running, heater on low, scrolling through his phone. He smiled at me. "Find your blazer?" he asked casually. "Yep," I said. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. If there had been an award for controlled devastation, I would have taken home the trophy. On the drive back to Meridian, he talked about expanding his client base, about maybe hiring an apprentice next year, about how business was finally starting to pick up. I stared out at the rolling foothills and counted fence posts along the highway so I wouldn't turn my head and scream. That was the moment my life divided into before and after. Before, I was a wife running errands on a Sunday. After, I was a woman who had just watched her husband kiss someone else under the wide, indifferent Idaho sky and decided, without saying a word, that I was going to pay attention. The drive home from the mall felt like it lasted 3 hours instead of 25 minutes. Derek sang along to a classic rock station, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel like he didn't have a secret life unfolding in mall parking lots. I watched the Boise skyline shrink in the rearview mirror and kept my face arranged into something neutral. Not cold, not suspicious, just normal. I've worked in payroll long enough to understand something crucial. Numbers don't panic. They wait. I decided I would too. That night, I moved through the kitchen like I always did. I chopped vegetables. I preheated the oven. I asked him about a client he'd mentioned earlier in the week. Derek talked easily, confidently, about a kitchen remodel in Eagle and a potential commercial contract for built-in shelving at a new office space downtown. He had details, measurements, timelines. He always had details. That was part of what made seeing him in that parking lot so disorienting. He didn't seem like a sloppy man. He built things square and level. Apparently, he lied the same way. Around 7, while he was outside grilling chicken, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It wasn't dramatic. Just a soft vibration against quartz. I wasn't planning to look. Not yet. But the screen lit up and the contact name caught my eye. It wasn't a name. It was a sunflower emoji. Just that. No explanation. No disguise beyond simplicity. A symbol so cheerful it almost mocked me. The preview of the message didn't show much. Just, missed you already. My pulse didn't spike. It slowed. That scared me more than anger would have. I stared at the emoji like it might rearrange itself into something innocent. Derek came back inside a minute later, tongues in one hand. He saw the screen light and, without hesitation, picked up the phone and flipped it face down. Smooth, casual, practiced. "Chicken's almost done," he said, like everything in our kitchen wasn't suddenly rearranged. I smiled at him over the salad bowl. That was the moment I understood this wasn't going to be solved with tears or shouting. This was going to require precision. The next morning, Sunday, he told me he had a supplier meeting in Nampa. He said it in that slightly rushed tone he used when he wanted something to sound routine. "I'll be back by early afternoon," he added. "Might grab lunch while I'm out." He showered, steam filling the bathroom. His phone sat on the dresser. I stood in the hallway for a full 30 seconds after the water started running. Then I walked in. If you've never picked up your spouse's phone while suspecting the worst, I can tell you this. It feels like stepping onto thin ice. Every movement is louder than it should be. His passcode was our golden retriever's birthday. Of course it was. I unlocked it on the first try. The sunflower contact was saved simply as L. I tapped. Her name was Lacey Monroe, 32, realtor, blonde, perfectly highlighted hair, the kind of smile that looks professionally maintained. Her Instagram bio read, "Turning keys and taking names." There were photos of staged living rooms, rooftop cocktails, lake days. The text thread wasn't vague. It wasn't flirty in a way that could be misinterpreted. "Same place Sunday? Miss your hands?" "Did you tell her about the new project yet?" The new project. My stomach flipped. The timestamps lined up with the Sundays Marisol mentioned. Mall parking lots, midday meetups, strategic windows of time when I was running errands or visiting my sister or meal prepping for the week. I didn't scroll frantically. I went methodically. I took 17 screenshots. I sent them to myself through a secure cloud folder I use for work backups. I deleted the sent notifications. I double-checked the recently deleted folder and cleared it. Then I placed the phone back on the dresser at the exact angle it had been before. The shower turned off. I stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall, breathing slowly until my face felt neutral again. He came out in a towel, kissed my cheek, and said, "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, "just thinking about work stuff." That part wasn't even a lie. After he left for Nampa, or wherever he was actually going, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and logged into our joint business account for Hale and Hearth Custom Interiors. This was the part that shifted everything from heartbreak to strategy. The first thing I noticed was a recurring payment, $650 to LM Staging Solutions, once a month, for 8 months. LM, Lacey Monroe, $5,200. Consulting, apparently. I clicked into transaction details. The routing number tied back to her real estate brokerage account. My inheritance, $22,000 from my grandmother, had helped launch that business. I had signed the operating agreement as equal member because Derek said it would strengthen the credit line. At the time, I thought it symbolized partnership. Now it looked like leverage. As I scrolled further, I found hotel charges at Riverfront Suites, a furniture purchase from a boutique decor store that definitely wasn't for one of Derek's client builds, and then a withdrawal labeled deposit $1,900. Deposit for what? That was when the emotional devastation finally caught up with me. Not because of the sex, not even because of the lies, but because of the planning, the structure, the financial integration. This wasn't spontaneous betrayal. This was infrastructure. I closed the laptop and sat very still in the quiet kitchen. The sunflower emoji had been careless. The bank statements were not. And if Derek thought I was just the wife who signed paperwork without reading it, he was about to learn something very expensive. I didn't cry that morning. I made a list. If part 1 was shock and part 2 was confirmation, part 3 was where the nausea turned into clarity. The screenshots weren't enough. They proved the affair, yes. They proved intention. But intention doesn't move assets. Documentation does. After Derek left for his supplier meeting, I didn't go back to bed or call in sick to work or sit on the floor crying. I opened every financial tab I had access to and started reading like my future depended on it, because it did. The Hale and Hearth account was the first layer. The monthly $650 payments to LM Staging Solutions were cleanly labeled, almost professional. Consulting services. That's what the memo line said. 8 months of consulting, $5,200 total. I pulled up our personal checking next. That's where the second wave hit. 2 charges at Riverfront Suites in Garden City, $236 and $249, both on weekdays. Derek claimed he was working late on client installs. A $480 purchase from a high-end furniture boutique that specialized in curated urban pieces, not cabinetry supplies, not lumber, decorative furniture. Then the line that made my chest tighten. Deposit, $900. No additional note. No vendor attached. Just deposit. Into what? I opened our savings account history, then the linked credit card statements, cross-referenced dates, matched timestamps to the text messages from Lacey. Can't wait for December. Feels more real now. December lingered. I closed the laptop and walked into Derek's workshop in the garage. The smell of sawdust and varnish hung in the air. His drafting table was cluttered with sketches for a kitchen island build, measurements written in thick pencil strokes, clean lines, clean edges. Derek was not a sloppy planner, which meant whatever that $1,900 deposit was for, there would be paperwork. He kept a 4-drawer metal filing cabinet against the back wall. Unlocked. Always unlocked. He used to joke that no one would ever want to read his boring business junk. I crouched in front of it and opened the top drawer. Invoices, tax forms, receipts from Home Depot and local lumber suppliers, everything loosely organized but complete. Second drawer, bank statements. Unopened envelopes stacked in neat piles. He rarely read the paper copies because everything was online. Third drawer, vehicle registration documents, equipment warranties, insurance paperwork. Fourth drawer, that's where I found it. A manila envelope, thicker than the others. My name wasn't on it. Neither was the business name. I opened it. Lease agreement, 1-bedroom condo. Downtown Boise. Move-in date December 1st. Tenant, Derek Hale. My breath stopped. Cosigner, Thomas Monroe, Lacey's father. There it was. The $900 deposit. First month's rent plus security. He wasn't just planning weekends. He was planning relocation. I sat back on my heels in the sawdust-covered garage and felt something inside me go very quiet. There's a specific kind of pain that isn't explosive. It's structural, like a support beam being quietly removed from a building while the exterior still looks intact. He was building a second life with the same precision he used to install cabinetry. And he had involved her family. Her father had co-signed, because Derek's credit on his own, burdened by startup costs for Hale and Hearth, wasn't strong enough. So my inheritance had helped build a business that made him look financially viable enough for another woman's father to vouch for him. That level of orchestration changes things. It stops being about heartbreak. It becomes about containment. I photographed every page of the lease agreement, the signature lines, the cosigner clause, the deposit confirmation. Then I put the papers back exactly as I found them, smoothed the edges of the envelope, slid it into place beneath the registration documents. When I stood up, my knees felt stiff, but my thoughts were sharp. He had a move-in date, December 1st, which meant he had a timeline, which meant I did too. Back inside the house, I sat at the kitchen table and opened a new folder on my laptop. I labeled it Documentation. Into it went the screenshots of the text messages, the transaction records showing the $650 monthly payments to LM Staging Solutions, the hotel receipts, the furniture charge, the withdrawal labeled deposit, and now the lease. I organized them chronologically, not emotionally. Chronologically. There's power in sequence. It tells a story without you having to raise your voice. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Meeting running long. Might grab dinner with supplier. I stared at the message and imagined him somewhere with Lacey, probably talking about paint colors or countertops for a condo I was never meant to see. I typed back, "No problem. Be safe." 3 words. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji. I closed my eyes and let the anger settle into something colder. He thought he was ahead of me. He thought the sunflower emoji was subtle. He thought the filing cabinet was safe. What he didn't understand, what he had never needed to understand before, was that I process information for a living. I audit discrepancies, I trace irregularities, and once I see a pattern, I don't unsee it. December 1st was 6 weeks away. He thought that was his exit date. He didn't realize it was my deadline. And I had just found the blueprint. By the time I found the lease, I wasn't shaking anymore. I was operating. There's a difference. Shaking is emotional. Operating is strategic. I'd moved past the question of whether Derek was cheating. That had been answered in a mall parking lot under a cloudy Idaho sky. Now the question was, how deep did this go, and how protected was I? I called Priya that afternoon from my car in the Summit Outdoor Supply parking lot. I didn't trust myself to say everything calmly face-to-face, and I didn't want to risk Derek walking in mid-sentence. Priya and I have known each other 8 years. We were hired the same month, trained under the same exhausted payroll manager, and survived 3 software migrations together. She's the kind of woman who color codes her spice rack and reads contracts for fun. When she answered, I didn't ease into it. "He leased a condo," I said. Silence on the other end. Then, "How sure are you?" "I have the lease in my camera roll. Move in December 1st. Her father co-signed." Another pause. Not shock, assessment. "Okay," she said finally. "What's your leverage?" Not "are you okay?" Not "that's awful." Just leverage. It was exactly what I needed. "My name's on the LLC," I said. "Equal member." "Good," she replied. "Then this isn't just about betrayal. It's about asset dissipation." Payroll people think in terms like that. Dissipation, misallocation, unauthorized distribution. Priya gave me the name of a business attorney she'd once used for a landlord dispute. Helen Cho. "She's not warm," Priya warned, "but she's effective." I called Helen the next morning during my lunch break. She fit Priya's description perfectly. Early 50s, clipped sentences, the kind of voice that doesn't waste adjectives. I laid out the facts in bullet points. The affair, the recurring $650 payments to LM Staging Solutions, the hotel charges, the $1,900 deposit, the condo lease co-signed by the girlfriend's father, and my 50% ownership of Hale and Hearth Custom Interiors. When I finished, there was a brief pause. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "Yes." "Organized?" "Yes." Another pause, this one almost approving. "Good. We don't need drama. We need records." I met her 2 days later in her downtown office. I brought a neatly tabbed folder, color-coded chronological, labeled. Text messages, bank statements, transaction histories, the lease agreement. I even included a copy of the operating agreement listing me as equal member of the LLC. Helen flipped through the pages with steady hands. "He used joint business funds for personal purposes," she said, repeatedly, "and he secured alternative housing prior to disclosure. That strengthens your position." Strengthens your position. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. We filed 2 actions simultaneously. First, a petition for divorce citing dissipation of marital assets. Second, a motion to freeze the Hale and Hearth business account pending full financial disclosure. As co-owner, I had the authority to request it, and because the documented payments tied directly to the affair, the argument was clean. No theatrics, just math. When the freeze order went through, it happened faster than I expected. Within hours, Derek's access to the business operating funds was restricted. Automatic payments paused. Incoming deposits flagged for review. That afternoon, I watched something almost clinical unfold. His phone lit up repeatedly while he was in the garage, finishing a cabinet door. He stepped inside, frowning at the screen. "What the hell?" he muttered. He walked back outside to take the call. I didn't need to hear the conversation to know what it was about. Later that evening, I saw him try calling Lacey, once, twice, 3 times, straight to voicemail. He tried again, voicemail. The next morning, I learned why. Helen called me. Her father received notice of the account freeze, she said calmly. He's listed in the lease documentation. I suspect financial support may be reconsidered. Translation: once the money stopped flowing, enthusiasm dried up. The sunflower emoji went quiet. Derek became tense, short-tempered, distracted. He kept checking his phone, stepping outside for private calls that lasted less than a minute. I moved through the house like I had before, cooking, folding laundry, answering work emails, but internally, something had shifted. For the first time since the mall, I didn't feel blindsided. I felt positioned. There's a specific kind of power in knowing you don't have to scream, that the evidence will speak in a room where your voice might otherwise be dismissed. Derek thought he was constructing an exit strategy. He thought December 1st was a clean break. He didn't account for the fact that the business he built, the one funded partly with my inheritance, was structurally tied to me. He built it that way because it helped him secure better credit. He thought it was smart. It was, just not in the way he intended. By the end of that week, I had an attorney, a filed petition, a frozen account, and a documented pattern of financial misconduct. Derek still didn't know I knew everything, but the clock had started ticking, and this time, I was the one controlling the timeline. By the time I decided to confront Derek, I had already rehearsed it at least a dozen times in my head, while brushing my teeth, while sitting in traffic on Eagle Road, while pretending to listen during a vendor budget call. I knew I couldn't let it turn into a shouting match. I couldn't let him redirect the narrative into privacy violations or "you went through my things." The documents were clean. The timing was strategic. All that was left was delivery. I chose a Tuesday night. There was nothing symbolic about it. No anniversary, no holiday, just a regular weekday, the kind of day he would least expect his life to detonate. I made lemon rosemary chicken, his favorite. The smell filled the house, warm and familiar. If someone had walked in blind, they would have thought we were fine. That's what betrayal looks like from the outside. Domestic, well-seasoned, completely ordinary. He came home at 6:10 p.m., boots thudding against the tile. "Smells amazing in here," he said, setting his keys on the counter. "You trying to spoil me?" I smiled. "Something like that." We sat down at the table. I placed his plate in front of him. Then I set a manila folder beside it. He glanced at it, mildly confused. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." There was a small shift in the air, not dramatic, just a tightening. He flipped it open casually at first. The top page was the transaction history, showing 8 months of $650 payments to LM Staging Solutions. I watched his face carefully. His eyes scanned, stopped, went back to the header. "What is this?" he asked, but his voice had already lost its steadiness. "Keep going." He turned the page. Hotel charges, furniture purchase, the withdrawal labeled deposit, then the screenshots of the text messages, the sunflower emoji. "Same place Sunday? Can't wait for December." His ears flushed red first. Derek always blushed from the ears inward. I'd never paid attention to that before. "You went through my phone?" he said quietly. I kept my voice level. "You built the paperwork. I just read it." He flipped faster now. The lease agreement slid into view. December 1st, downtown condo. Co-signer, Thomas Monroe. His hand froze. For a moment, he didn't speak. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. Then he reached for his phone. He called Lacey. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. A third time, still nothing. I didn't interrupt him. I let him feel the silence on the other end. "What did you do?" he finally snapped, looking up at me. "I filed," I said. "Divorce petition and a motion to freeze the Hale and Hearth account as co-owner. That landed harder than anything else. You can't just freeze my business," he said. "Our business," I corrected calmly. "You added me as equal member for better credit terms. Remember?" He stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. "They can't do that," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "They already did." He stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. He dialed another number. "Dad," he said when someone answered. "Did you get a call from some attorney's office?" I couldn't hear the response, but I saw the color drain from his face. He hung up without saying goodbye. For the first time since the mall parking lot, I felt something steady settle in my chest. Not revenge, not triumph, just balance. He sank back into his chair and stared at the papers. "She knew," he whispered. "Her father co-signed your condo," I said. This wasn't subtle. He covered his face with his hands. "Corinne, I was going to tell you." "When? After I packed your boxes?" He didn't answer. The lemon rosemary chicken sat untouched between us, steam fading. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Transparency, settlement, and my money back." He laughed once, hollow. "You're serious." I've never been more serious in my life. That night, he slept in the guest room. I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling fan, waiting for the wave of grief to crash over me. It didn't. Instead, I felt strangely clear. The freeze on the business account meant no more $650 consulting payments, no more quiet transfers, no more building a second life on my inheritance. The next day, I learned through Helen that Lacey had blocked Derek's number within hours of the account freeze notification. Her father, apparently, was less interested in supporting romance when legal filings were involved. The sunflower went dark. It's a strange thing, watching a relationship dissolve from the outside while you're still technically inside your own marriage. By the end of the week, Derek's tone had shifted from defensive to resigned. His attorney contacted Helen to discuss settlement. He'd built his exit strategy carefully. He just hadn't accounted for the fact that I was reading the blueprints the entire time. And now, the structure was collapsing exactly where it was weakest, at the foundation. The divorce finalized 11 weeks after I set that manila folder beside Derek's dinner plate. 11 weeks from parking lot to paperwork. If you'd asked me before all this how long it takes to dismantle a marriage, I would have said years. Turns out, if the documentation is clean and the leverage is solid, it can move quickly. Derek's attorney advised settlement after the first mediation session. Helen laid out the financial timeline with surgical precision. 8 months of payments to LM Staging Solutions, hotel charges, furniture purchases, the condo deposit, all sourced from joint marital funds and the LLC account in which I held equal ownership. She didn't raise her voice once. She didn't need to. The numbers did the talking. I recovered my full $22,000 inheritance investment. Every dollar. On top of that, $6,300 in misused business funds was returned as part of the settlement. The $1,900 condo deposit came back into our joint account before the account itself was closed. Hale and Hearth Custom Interiors was dissolved. Equipment sold. Contracts reassigned or terminated. What Derek had once described as his legacy ended as a line item. He moved out 2 weeks before the paperwork was officially stamped. Not into the condo. That lease evaporated once Lacey's father realized the financial situation wasn't as stable as he'd assumed. Instead, Derek packed his clothes, a few tools, and drove to Twin Falls to stay in his brother's basement. I watched from the living room window as he loaded the last box into his truck. No yelling, no tears, just the quiet thud of tailgate metal closing on a chapter. The house felt different that first night alone. Not sad, spacious. The silence wasn't heavy. It was neutral. I walked through each room slowly, noticing small things I'd stopped seeing. The scuff mark near the hallway baseboard, the way the evening light hit the kitchen counters, the faint smell of sawdust still lingering in the garage workshop. I kept the house. Refinanced in my name. The mortgage payment adjusted slightly, but with the settlement funds and what was coming next, I wasn't worried. Because in the middle of all this, something else happened. Dale, my boss at Summit, retired at the end of the quarter. He'd been there 23 years. There was sheet cake in the break room and a card signed by half the building. The payroll director position opened officially the following Monday. 3 months earlier, I might have hesitated, might have doubted whether I had the focus or energy to take on more responsibility. But betrayal sharpens you. It strips away distractions. I interviewed with a clarity I didn't know I possessed. I spoke about risk mitigation, compliance oversight, internal audit improvements. I talked about strengthening controls and identifying discrepancies before they escalated. 2 weeks later, HR called me into the conference room overlooking the Boise River. The promotion was mine. 28% raise, full benefits package, a glass-walled office with a door that closed, my name on the directory in slightly larger font. The first morning I sat at that desk, I didn't think about Derek. I thought about the filing cabinet in the garage, about the lease agreement, about the freeze order, about the way everything shifted the moment I stopped reacting and started documenting. On a quiet Thursday evening in early spring, I painted the old workshop a soft sage green. It took 2 coats to cover the darker scuffs on the drywall. I opened the windows, let the air move through the room. By Sunday, the space held a desk, a bookshelf, and a framed photo of my grandmother, the woman whose inheritance unknowingly funded both a business and its unraveling. The filing cabinet went to Goodwill. I didn't bother wiping it down. Lacey's Instagram bio changed within weeks. The polished real estate posts gave way to vague quotes about growth and new beginnings. Derek's social media went silent entirely. Every now and then, someone will ask if I'm angry. I was. But anger is loud and short-lived. What lasted longer was the quiet understanding that the most powerful move I made wasn't confronting him in the mall parking lot or throwing his things onto the lawn. It was paying attention. It was reading the paperwork. It was recognizing that my name on an operating agreement wasn't sentimental. It was structural. Derek thought he was designing an exit. He mapped out timelines, secured a cosigner, labeled payments as consulting. What he didn't account for was this. I audit for a living. I track irregularities. I notice patterns. On certain evenings now, I sit on the back patio with a cup of tea and watch the light fade over the foothills. The house is quiet in a way that feels earned. The future isn't mapped out in detail anymore, and that's fine. I've learned something more valuable than predictability. If someone is building a secret life behind your back, you don't need to burn it down in a blaze. Sometimes all you have to do is pull one documented thread. The rest of the structure collapses exactly as designed. Life advice? Pay attention to the details, both in love and in paperwork. If something feels off, don't panic. Document it. Emotions fade, but receipts are forever. Protect your peace, know your leverage, and never underestimate the power of quiet preparation. And if you enjoy stories where calm beats chaos, subscribe to the Revenge Protocol YouTube channel, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and remember, stay sharp.